It is 4 o'clock. I will call the meeting to order. We'll begin with the roll call.
Mayor Sue Patterson,
Present.
Deputy Mayor Warren Dickert,
Present.
Councillor Harold Fleet,
Present.
Councillor Dave Hawking,
Present.
Councillor Carol Hudson,
Present.
Councillor Brandon Cable,
Present.
and Councillor Susan Zackel.
Present.
Thanks, Vicky. All members are present and accounted for. The land acknowledgement. As we work toward reconciliation with Indigenous people, we begin our meeting today by respectfully acknowledging that we are situated on the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe Nation, the people of Three Fires known as Ojibwe, Odawa, and Potawatomi nations. And further give thanks to the Chippewas of Saugeen and the Chippewas of Nawash, now known as the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, as the traditional keepers of this land. Welcome to our Finance Committee meeting for Monday, October 28th, 2024. Good afternoon, council, staff, guests, the viewing public, and the media. Council, does anyone have a disclosure of pecuniary interest or a conflict of interest? Of course, if one should arise during the meeting, you may declare it then. Item 4 is agenda additions or deletions, and we do not have any. Item 5 is delegations, and we have one this afternoon. We have Adam Olivero, Chairperson, for Launchpad Board of Directors. Welcome, Adam. And you know how to work the sound?
I feel like I remember how to work the sound.
I knew you would.
It's been a while since I've been in the chambers. Good afternoon, Your Worship, members of council and staff present, the media. Thank you for allowing me to speak to you about Launchpad today. Just before I get started, I want to acknowledge some fellow board members who are here with us today. With Susan Zackel, a board member, and I heard Brandon Cable virtually, wherever you are, Brandon. Thanks for joining us. And we also have your town council or your rep or treasurer, April Marshall here. And in the audience as well as one of our newest directors, Julia Mallett, is back here as well too. So thank you all for coming here tonight. As you may be aware, at Launchpad, we have used these past 2 years to restructure and expand our mandate to include youth and young adults in our programming. We've also worked hard as a board to restructure our staff complement and align our staff roles with our new mandate. Throughout the last year, we have moved to implement this new mandate. Unfortunately, this year, we've had to manage some gaps in employment for our primary management roles that have ultimately had an effect on our ability to execute our key priorities and work plans. These extenuating circumstances have impacted conducting our programming to a full capacity, seeking donations, grants, and unforeseen consulting fees, and impacting our budget for 2024. We've also had to absorb and complete a grant into this year for completion that money was distributed to and accounted for in our 2022 budget. These positions have left Launchpad in a projected deficit position for the end of 2024. Our current board of directors is committed to Launchpad and has made it a priority to be accountable for the previous errors in operations of the organization. With the recent hire of our youth programs manager this past August, we are also starting the implementation of youth programming at Launchpad again. We've expanded our board members to a complement of 9, with new members having experience in legal, finance, and fundraising roles. We also have one successful grant application that will be implemented in 2025 and another grant of a substantial amount that we are hoping to have confirmation for before the end of 2024. We are also appreciative of the memorandum of understanding between the town and Launchpad that will further strengthen our partnership between us. The other partners we have in the community include the local Ironworkers Union, Liuana Local 1059, and the Fanshawe College. Through these partnerships, we've been able to expand our offerings to train local young adults in skilled laborers for a career here in Grey Bruce. I look to these achievements as a launching forward for the start of 2025. We're looking for time to execute these grants, along with our staff work plans for a full calendar year. Our local partners also remain committed to Launchpad and look forward to using our facilities in 2025. My request to you on behalf of the Launchpad Board of Directors is to consider deferring the first loan repayment term to begin in 2025 and to come back to this committee here at the end of this year with actual financial statements to further discuss if additional support is needed. We want you to feel proud of Launchpad and confident that the Board of Directors is accountable for the generous annual contributions on behalf of the town. And thank you again for your time. I'm free to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Adam. Are there any questions at this time for Adam? Clarifications, knowing that there is a report further on
Yes.
the agenda. Councillor Sacco.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, Adam, for your report. I just want to take this opportunity to thank you. I met you in 2022 for the first time, and I want to thank April as well, because the two of you have been wonderful. It's just so commendable, the work and the time that you have had to put in, given the challenges that Launchpad has faced, and I want to thank you for all of your efforts.
Well, thank you very much.
I agree.
Thank you.
Well done. You put a lot of time and effort in as your board of directors. And it's not often that you do get volunteers that step up to the plate to see things through. So,
Thank you.
okay, I don't see any other hands, so we'll move on. Thank
Okay.
you, Adam.
Thank you very much. Appreciate the time.
Next on the agenda is business arising from the minutes, and it was asked to have a Parks and Recreation rates and fees comparison. So Laura, you're going to start that? Maybe?
I'll bring forward this. This is the
Okay,
information
sorry.
that council requested, that could you compare our rates to other municipalities in the area? So they were provided to you for all the different areas, and I think there's 5 sheets there for you. So if you have any specific questions on those, that's just to tell you the background as to where they came up with the rates for the town of Hanover.
Thanks, Chris. Are there any questions at this time? Or do you want to discuss when we get to the report? Okay, we'll move on. Thanks for putting that together. Next on the agenda is adoption of previous minutes, and I need a mover and seconder to put the Finance Committee meeting minutes from September 23rd on the floor for discussion if needed. Councillor Sacco and Deputy Mayor Dicker. Is there any discussion with those minutes? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? That is carried. We're on to staff reports, and the next one is report FIN 0324 DCS. It's from Chris Walker, our Director of Corporate Services and Treasurer, and the subject is the 2025 user fees and charges. I need a mover and seconder for that. Councillor Hocking and Councillor Fleet. Chris.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is a report that we bring forward each year. Department heads and their respective advisory committees review their user fees and charges for the upcoming budget year. So all schedules A to M have been attached. And as per the request of this committee, it was that we have a minimum of 3% and a review of additional costs that should be implemented. So really look at a huge overview of so some may be a little less than 3, but there were several that were over the 3%. Under the discussion area, I've given you a table there, kind of tells you on each of those schedules how much money you can see of the impact if we were to do year to date as of now, based on these new rates, to see the additional monies that you would have for each of those specific schedules. I'm not going to go through each individual one. You had the opportunity to look at that. And the attached schedules, we showed you in red and highlighted in yellow all the changes that are proposed for those. Each department is here to assist if there's any questions regarding their specific rates, because I'm not privy to how they came up with a lot of those rates because of their areas of expertise. So the financial proposed revisions will generate about $27,200 in additional revenue with these changes. All the other areas of fees and charges, such as the water, wastewater, and landfill, were specific to those areas, and those are user fees. So I didn't put them in there because that won't affect the taxes at all. And if you want to go to any specific schedule, perhaps this is the time where they would ask the questions through your mayor, instead of me going through each one and saying which has been increased and whatnot.
Very good. Okay, let's start with comments, questions. Deputy Mayor Dickert.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a couple of questions I had when I was reading through them. Just wondering why there's the rate difference between a baseball game and a fastball game. One's $56, one's $42.95, and the other one was on the swim memberships. The rate changes, there's one there that changes 1%, which is a student to 6 months. And there's another one that changes 36%, which is the family annual. So just curious as to how we arrived at that.
Happy to answer that, Your Worship. Thank you. So the first question relating to the ball diamonds. So the hard ball, I'll kind of compare it a little bit with our LED lighting project at the arena. So we kind of have those different levels. So a junior C game versus a figure skating, they certainly don't need that same level of light. So the hard ball has 54 bulbs on that field versus our typical lighted baseball field has 14. So there's a pretty big difference there in the number of bulbs specifically. So then if you can appreciate the maintenance costs that go along with the bulbs themselves and the cost to replace those.
So it's not really a difference between fastball and hardball. It's a difference between where they're playing it. Because
Yes,
it's
they
the
always
scoop
play,
that I
they always play
Yeah.
fastball on the fastball diamond.
Yeah.
Okay. And then further to answer your second question, so we, after taking a look at our membership rates, I know at one point it was kind of proposed from council to kind of look at that sort of that $50, as that increase. But the challenge is it kind of needs to be proportional, based on the rates are different. So for example, a preschool rate is very different than a adult rate or a senior rate. So it had to be proportional in that sense. And when we took a look at our membership fees, we identified kind of some inconsistencies in our pricing structure. In previous years, we didn't adjust the rates. So we didn't adjust the single rates, but then we went ahead and we adjusted, say, a pass and a membership. So if you recall, we did not increase our single rates from 2016 up until the first change was last year, but we have been continuously kind of upgrading and increasing, I should say, not upgrading, increasing our rates for the memberships and passes. So there was a disparity. The numbers got skewed, the percentages got skewed. And so the proposed fee adjustments that are put forward today aims to correct that proportional skewing.
If I could further reiterate there, you'll notice in the swim membership on page 23 of your package, you'll see that they show in the swim membership admission, whatever the admission price is, times so many weeks and times so many things. So that's where Laura is coming up with proportional amounts.
Councillor Fleet.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is on page 25 regarding the library. What I'm looking at is a non-resident fee for 1 year, 3 months, and student fee. I see there's no increase in 2025, and I'm just wondering why there wouldn't be that 3% increase.
So the user fee is based on the amount of people we serve and comparing it to what a Hanover resident pays. So we didn't increase it because we don't think the increase is happening for the taxes. Is that correct, Tris?
The increases for the taxes?
Yes. The library would be charged the same on the taxes.
No, you're asking for an increase right now on the 2025.
But
About
what each
3%.
residents pay?
It's hard to say because each resident doesn't pay. It's the taxpayer that pays and it's based on assessment. So there is no direct rate that each one has to pay. So I can't say that that's the amount that you would be
Okay.
looking at.
Well, how we calculate it is based on how much we get and then how much a Hanover person was paying.
Yeah, I just, everything else goes up in price, wages, cost of, lights, hydro. I just didn't see an increase there of the 3%, and I just wondered why there wouldn't be. So I don't know if that's something you want to revisit or, just let it go. That's fine. Thanks.
Other comments or questions? Counselor Sackel.
Thank you, Your Worship. Laura, back to the swim memberships on page 23, please. So in 2020, current rate for a family annual membership, $571.75. You're now suggesting they pay $780. So that's not a single person, that's a family. That sounds like a lot to me. How many families would buy an annual membership? Do you know?
I don't have that data with me of how many.
So your explanation that you gave a moment ago still applies for the family membership as well?
Yes, it does. Yeah, it's based on that new single rate fee. Is kind of that root factor, that calculation.
I still need to say that I think it's a lot for families, just based on talking to families that are struggling. Thank you.
Counselor Cable.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm very pleased that we're going ahead with this proposal for a new structure for our rates. As Laura was saying, essentially going forward, we would just be looking at the rate being adjusted based on the single admission. And so if everything goes up a quarter, then we would be multiplying that by 50, would be the new price for the pass, multiplying by 30 for a 6 month. So I think it just makes sense as far as the value that people are receiving. As far as the $780 for the family pass, as long as that family goes to the pool 1 time a week or 52 times in the year, then they would break even. And so that's essentially where we were coming up with that structure. Given that I was looking at the 10 pass and the 20 pass in comparison to our new rates, and also in comparison to the Hufflepuff hockey. And I do wonder if we should adjust so that the 10 pass is 9 times the single admission and a 20 pass would be 17 times the single admission, just to make sure that we're more in line with some of our other areas.
Counselor Cable, Laura is saying, yes, that's possible if people are in agreement.
Also, one small adjustment. This is on, trying to think, I'm not sure what page it is, but it's for the non-prime hourly rate. I believe it's 50% of the regular rate. And so I think that in the schedule, it was increased by 3%, but I think it just needs to be adjusted so that it's 50% of the new hourly rate. It's slightly out.
Okay, where are we on page 20? Not where.
It's somewhere around $69.
Okay, got it.
So I think we just need to make sure that that instead of it being $69, it should be half of the hourly rate above.
Okay. Chris, did you have a comment?
Yes, it was regarding on page 23 that Brandon was talking about the swim passes. I'm assuming that you want that admission 10 and 20 for all across the board, preschool, student, senior, adult, aquafit, family, all across the board, to be the 9 times and 17 times?
I'll just comment there. The only one that I would say, the Aquafit, because that is an instructor led, we have additional fees for that particular program. So if you can see right now, it is based on a 9 and 18, 9 for the 10 visit and 18 for the 20. I would propose to keep that one the same.
Counselor Cable?
That is perfectly fine with me.
Okay. Counselor Hawking?
Thank you, Your Worship, and thanks to the staff for doing all this investigation. It's worthwhile. I like just to put this in perspective. So my question is to Chris. I can't find it in the package, but I think I read for a 1% drop in levy, we have to find sort of was it $141,000?
The last one. Last page of the whole.
Okay, yeah, was that where it was?
It'll be on the last page.
Okay,
And $141 and no, that was the previous previous one I gave you back in September. Let me get that for you here. Actually, I think it was from last year that we had talked about $141,000 for every 1%.
right, right.
No, but 1% on our levy is $91,204. So every $91,000 on levy, is 1%
Right.
of the
right,
levy.
Okay, and my point is that through our user fee increases, you mentioned it's about $27,000 excluding water and.
Yeah,
those others.
Correct.
So I guess what I'm saying is that's 0.3%.
Yeah, not even.
Of our total.
Right.
Right, so it's not, it's good, but it's not, we're not gonna battle down our tax levy through user fees. I guess that's my point. But it's good to see that we keep a gradual increase because it doesn't take long to fall behind. And I welcome that. So thanks again, everyone, for your good work. But it's not the be all and end all to our situation. Thank you.
Okay. Other questions or comments for Chris or Laura or any of the staff that are here? Okay, Councillor Cable, your hand is still raised. Do you have another question?
No, I do not.
Okay, that's good. Thank you. All right, so I don't see any further burning questions. So it's been moved by Councillor Hawking, seconded by Councillor Fleet to approve FIN 0324. All in favor? Oh, with the amendments. With the amendments. And Councillor Cable, you're in favor.
Yes.
Thank you. That is carried. So we're on to the Launchpad financial update. This is report FIN 0124. It's from April Marshall, our economic development manager. I need a mover and seconder to put this on the floor. Councillor Hawking and Deputy Mayor Dickert. Thank you. April?
Thank you, Your Worship. So to provide a bit of background here, I'm writing this report on behalf of the Board of Directors and as the town representative in helping to hold accountability towards the town's contribution to Launchpad. So just to provide a bit of a background here, I just wanted to provide a list of reports that have been prepared in the past 20 months in an effort to keep council, therefore the finance committee, updated on the state of our reorganization, our operations, and to develop that memorandum of understanding to clearly identify the roles and responsibilities in this relationship between the town and Launchpad. So just not to spend a lot of time on it, but Launchpad was started in 2015 and originally had a mandate to be a vehicle to support youth ages 12 to 18 to promote youth retention in our area and provide a safe space for youth to explore their curiosity and develop their skill sets through programming. Therefore, deferring them from making unhealthy choices or potentially finding trouble, I guess, as you could say, on the streets. in the response to and our need to further support area employers and workforce and skill development, Launchpad broadened the mandate in 2023 to continue to be that safe space for youth and concentrate on that 12 to 18 range, but acknowledging that youth doesn't, you're not a youth, I guess, after 18. You're still a young person, you're still developing your skills, and our employers have identified a need to upskill and our area employees to benefit our employers and then the needs that they currently have. This has been demonstrated through the need for like skilled tradespeople. So this became an opportunity for Launchpad to leverage the infrastructure they had in place and the relationships they have to further support training and development for our young people, therefore helping our employers across the region in filling that skills gap. And this is also demonstrated through Hanover's Retention and Attractions Campaign, HIP, Hanover's Innovative People Program, and our stream of apprentice, so that we could really leverage the investment that's been made at Launchpad and further grow the skill sets amongst our young people in the area. Therefore, Launchpad is working towards being that community hub for employers, young adults, and service providers to develop that pathway to apprenticeships and deliver skilled trades training. The town and board again entered into an MOU to outline the financial contribution, services, and support the town is prepared to provide the board in providing skills training and programming services to the public. So the discussion for this evening is we recognize the want and the need for Launchpad to have a more sustainable future. Financial growth has been a challenge though, due to the original service model. So the need for change became very critical. The current board of directors has been working diligently for the past couple of years to correct the financial deficits incurred through previous leadership and create a profitable model moving forward. This has not happened, although as quickly as we had hoped. This organization has been faced with several extenuating circumstances as of late and are still working their way through them. Examples of this include some grant monies that were received in 2022 and unfortunately were absorbed into the operational budget at that time and not applied appropriately to actually complete the project. So therefore, the expense has been incurred in 2024 when the project deadline was due. That therefore has impacted this year's budget. Repayment of the loan for the town for the previous year's deficits. If you recall, it totaled approximately, well, it totaled $95,000, just over that. So at the time when we brought that forward, we put a repayment plan together, dividing that into 3-year increments to start in 2024 and end in 2026. And interest was calculated and added to that. The intention was, and for the first payment to come out in 2024, which it has been deducted from the town's contribution. So therefore, I guess at this point is technically paid, but as we'll talk about in our recommendations, we're asking for that to be deferred. So some other unforeseen expenses can include consultant fees and some gaps in employment have restricted the organization from running at a full complement and having resources to implement the new work that we need to do to implement robust programs, source grant opportunities, and execute fundraising and donation campaigns. So as Chair Olivero commented on, the current board of directors has set priority on being accountable for previous errors in the operations of the organization and are taking many steps to build a positive relationship with the town as the primary partner and supporter so that we can all prosper from shared goals and successful outcomes and community impacts. So Launchpad wants the town to be a proud partner and feel confident that they are accountable for the generous annual contributions. So, as mentioned, unfortunately, due to the noted circumstances, Launchpad is hovering a deficit position. And the projections for this year state that we will incur that by the end of the budget year. Launchpad was successful in not incurring a deficit in 2023. But however, having these past debts has hit us this year for sure. A financial overview of contributions made since 2015, since inception, are detailed, and I know that's in response to council's request for further information on the contributions. But I would also like to note, no increases were sought in the annual financial contribution, as we're all stating, expenses are going up, and Launchpad is trying to keep the Hanover's contribution at the same amount, and has been successful, apart from, of course, the incurred deficits that we're speaking about this evening. So as far as the projections for the remainder of this fiscal year, we have detailed some of the revenue that we are expecting, and the expenses. Also, again, noting that the first loan payment and installment with interest has already been deducted from the town's annual contribution. We are very hopeful because we have been successful in being approved for a skills instructor expansion project grant of $62,000 that will be incurred in 2025. And we also have a pending application for skills development pathways onto workforce, or POW project, in the amount of $257,000 that would take Launchpad to the next level and put us in that position for that sustainable future, we note, because going through the application, that was very important to demonstrate that, and we feel confident that we have been able to do that. So with all this, Launchpad Board of Directors appreciates council's consideration in the Finance Committee this evening to defer the first loan repayment term to begin in 2025, and to come back to this committee at the end of the year with actual financial statements to further discuss if additional support is needed. The board has also sought the opportunity to acquire further financial support through a loan with a third party if required. So the link to the strategic plan is a strong and vibrant economy, and the recommendation being that report FIN 0124 ED Launchpad financial update be received, that the Finance Committee advise staff with the recommendation on the financial involvement of the town of Hanover in the organization of Launchpad as they continue to restructure the operations and implement plans for a sustainable future, and that the Finance Committee support deferring Launchpad's 2024 loan repayment term to begin in 2025. So I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thanks, April. Comments or questions? Councillor Hocking.
Thank you, Worship. Thanks, April, for your report. I just have a question on your financial overview. Your 3 bullets, total municipal contribution of $1,010,105.62, and then there's leasehold improvements, and then there's rent. Does the leasehold improvements and the rent come out of the $1,010,000, or is it an additional to the $1,010,000? So making a total of 1.7 million total? Is that, am I reading? that right?
No, you would, no, sorry. Excuse
It's
me,
okay.
sorry. There is an annual contribution, and that's what the first bullet point reflects. Yes, in a sense, the leasehold improvements and land and the rent do come from operations, but I would not say that the town annual contribution certainly supports that.
Okay.
But I wouldn't be mushing those numbers together per
Okay,
se.
that's my point.
Okay,
So
yeah.
that sounds better to me.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
Other, Councillor Hudson.
Thank you, Your Worship. So the skills instruction grant that you had mentioned, can you tell me what ages that is going to apply to? What age of people? Is it youth or is it early 20s?
So the new age target for Launchpad is 12 to 29 years old. We will still have programs outside of those ages, but that is our primary focus.
Counselor Hudson, anything further? No? Okay. Counselor Fleet.
Thank you, Worship. Thank you, April. This is doing with budget again, and maybe Chris can answer this question. How long do you have left on the lease on that property?
The lease on the property is up for renewal in May 2025.
So have you looked at your budget going forward, that there could be an increase in rent, or maybe the $1,000 that we were receiving back you will not receive? I think it's something that you've got to look forward to in your budget going forward into 2025, because there could be an increase, or you might be looking for a new home. You don't know that, but I think it's something we really have to look at. And I'm just going to touch on something here. So if I'm in business and I'm running a deficit and I go to my banker, I'm probably going to be shut down. And that's business. And I don't like to see Launchpad running a deficit. Nobody wants to run a deficit. And we report to the citizens of Hanover how their tax dollars are being spent. And like Councillor Sacco said, about the pool pass, worrying about young families being able to afford it. Well, we're also taking tax dollars from these young families to support, Launchpad that has a deficit. So it is concerning for me with that deficit. So.
Thank you, Councillor Fleet. It's noted for sure. Like, as we're stating, unfortunately, these deficits that we are trying to pay for were incurred in previous years. And yes, it would be nice to be able to go back and facilitate that not happening at that time. But due to the model and that was structured before, the town had more representation on the board. I think that wasn't addressed at the time accordingly. And you're right, like, if you're running a business and you're in a deficit, you don't have the luxury of having having a body to cover those expenses for you. And I really don't know what to say to that, because unfortunately it was previous years that this was garnered. And, the current state, we're trying to get ahead of this. We're trying to rectify this, and it is what it is. And we're just trying to do our best here to be accountable to the taxpayers. But I also want the taxpayers to recognize that Launchpad is helping employers of this area and our employees. It's going to help with job retention and attraction, because we're hearing through all of our third-party organizations that are assessing what skill sets are needed in this region, what future job opportunities are available, and the current state of employers recognizing that skills gap and not having the employers that they need. We know that there is a need to upskill people in our area. There is a need to deliver training locally to support our employers. And I would like the opportunity to further educate everybody, or our tax dollars, or our ratepayers, that to maybe help. And I know the confidence might not be there yet, but change this narrative a little bit in this conversation about how Launchpad can support our region and create jobs versus looking at what it's taking. Because I don't think it should be viewed as that big bad expense. You know what I mean? Like, I think it should be viewed as a great thing. We're lucky to have this asset. We need the opportunity to implement this and show the results. while we're trying to balance, I guess, and I don't mean to offend anybody that was previously on the board or that worked there. I really am not. But it's just, we are paying for those past mistakes. So we're trying to get ahead of that now. Thank you.
Counselor reply? Go ahead, Counselor Fleet.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, April. And I do really appreciate all the work that the board is putting yourself into Launchpad. And I also want to thank the previous directors that have worked in Launchpad boards, because they've tried their best. And you know, I don't want to point fingers to anyone. It's just unfortunate we're competing with the education system now with the trades. And you know, anybody that's been involved with Launchpad, I've donated to Launchpad. I support the concept of Launchpad, but you know, the deficit is an issue. Thank you.
Counselor Sacco.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm thinking back a couple of weeks when Councillor Hawking reminded us that in Ingersoll, the town of Ingersoll purchased a building, and their Launchpad, I don't know what their group is called actually, Councillor Hawking, that would have made a huge difference for us financially if we actually owned the building. But having to pay the lease every year is just handcuffing us in simple words. You know, over the last 2 years, I've been to presentations for Bruce Power. April even invited the DGR people to come in and talk to us about that. And they said exactly what April was commenting on today. We're looking at the future. They're looking at places like Launchpad as a possible location for, like you say, training skilled workers. And I think that's really important for us to keep in mind. People think we're lucky to have Launchpad. They say that to us all the time. And I know, being on the Community Safety and Wellbeing Committee, I brought it up that we've got Launchpad here in Hanover. Don't forget us. So I really want you to keep that in mind. Bruce Power is going to be increasing isotope production. I know you've all heard that. And that could mean training here in Hanover for people to work at Bruce Power. So we're changing. Launchpad is changing. Yes, we do have a deficit. Yes, we're working hard to overcome it. And we've got some bright lights in the future. I hope that you can put your faith in us. Thank you.
Counselor Hawking.
Further to Councillor Sackle's suggestion, I called Fusion today in Ingersoll just to get sort of an update, because I knew this was coming today. And you're absolutely right. They were given a school that has an art room, a school that has a gymnasium, a school that has all kinds of space. And the director, who has been there since 2008, it says the key to theirs is they rent out the entire facility during the day. They have multitude of organizations contributing to rental income, and they still run a program in the evening and charge $5 a membership. However, he did say that the Council of the Day still supports, because it's a loss leader, even with all their rental income, they still do not balance their budget. However, that is not, and they don't have to pay a yearly lease. So there is a different scenario, and they have far more options than we do due to space. So just wanted to add that. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Dickert.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, April. You know, this is one of these difficult decisions, because I don't think anyone sitting here thinks that people aren't trying really hard. And as Councillor Sackle and Mayor Patterson said earlier, I think the board of directors is working really, really hard to make this work. That being said, I'm concerned when I look and I look that you're going to a third party for another loan, or for a loan, and who's accountable for that loan if it doesn't, if you use it and it's not repaid, does that going to fall back on the taxpayer as well? And you know, is this it's not lack of effort on anybody's part. I don't think. I think everybody's worked really hard on this, but there's a bit of a trend going here that's going in the wrong direction, I guess, shall we say. And that's not to insult anybody or the concept of Launchpad or anything, but you know, we're looking at a lot of significant numbers here as we move forward with our budget and things that, you know, priorities that our town has shown us, and to continue to put additional money in and defer, you know, this money now that's owing the town, and the potential of a loan that may also come back on the town, I'm assuming. It raises a lot of concerns for me, and I'm not sure I can support deferring it. So that's my thoughts.
Thank you. And I'm glad you said that, Deputy Mayor. This report here is only whether we agree to defer the loan payment term. This is not whether we are going to fund Launchpad or not. This is deferring the loan repayment. And I know it's difficult to separate everything because we are intertwined very closely. And how Launchpad is managed and run is not up to this council. It is up to the board of directors. They are a separate board similar to the police and the library. And I know we are supposed to be at arm's length, but we have that MOU with all of our resources being put forth to help Launchpad. So, but to keep in mind, just to pull it back, this is for loan repayment deferral. Other discussion will take place further in the budget later in probably December, maybe November. Councillor Cable.
Thank you, Your Worship. And I think it's been stated many times in the meeting so far that the Board of Directors is working very hard over the past couple of years, putting in a lot of time to try and reposition Launchpad for the betterment of our community. When I think specifically about this report, looking at deferring the loan, I think that it was made fairly clear to the board in 2023 when the loan was undertaken that it would be repaid starting in 2024. I do think that the board should be held accountable to that. And I also think that perhaps looking at another option for the funding is something that should be considered.
Other comments or questions? Chris, what does it mean exactly if we defer to 2025?
It basically means that $31,702 that was to be repaid to our general reserves won't happen until 2025. So I'd put back the 31,700 as revenue to them being, sorry, to Launchpad. And right now I did a report, and at the end of, I think it was October 22nd, when I provided all the financial information to April, they were at a deficit of 10,400, and that was including the $16,000 that they were expecting from the Ontario grants through the county. And if we put back 31,000, they would have a surplus at this point of 21,000.
Thank you.
But then keep in mind, you still have more revenues to come in, and you still have wages and benefits and stuff to pay for the final 2 months and a week.
Anything further? Any questions, comments? Okay, I'm going to call the question. All in favor of FIN 0124 ED, and this is to defer Launchpad's 2024 loan repayment term to begin in 2025. All those in favor? 3. Those opposed? That motion fails. Okay. Thank you. Moving on, item, I have 7.3. I think it's not 7.3, it's 8.3 maybe. We have the 2025 proposed capital budget. It's from Chris Walker, our Director of Corporate Services and treasurer, and this is report FIN 0424 DCS. I need a mover and seconder to put this on the floor, and I'll take Councillor Cable and Councillor Hawking. Chris.
Thank you, Worship. At our meeting back in September, the Finance Committee requested some adjustments to the 2025 capital to provide during that meeting, and part of that was the rooftop mechanical updates to reduce the project from that 1,181,000 being, you know, the high-end electrical, green gas saving energy efficiency down to the like for like project. So replace with as is, and there would be some savings there. We were able to reduce that down to 780,000 in 1 year, with the impact for the tax being reduced from 182 down to 150, and everything would be completed in 1 year. So we'd have additional savings with the what's that thing called? The crane to lift things up and down, and as well as doing all the roof replacement. The other one was you asked for the loader replacement to consider options of internal borrowing for this. Right now, we put aside monies each year. Right now, it's about $32,000 a year, and we have some money in there right now to cover part of the loader. So we would still require about $140,000, and we could borrow this internally over 4 years, which would reduce the tax impact down from $200,000 to $50,000. So that's a reduction of $150,000 on the tax dollars. And this will not impact our future operations, as since we are currently putting aside reserves for the loader from the revenue received at the landfill, we can continue doing that. And the first 4 years, we would actually repay ourselves in the general reserves. Like we'd normally put it aside for a specific loader reserve, but those first 4 years, we would actually put it to repay our internal loan. We continue with that 40,000, and then in the 15 years when it needs to be replaced, we would have $440,000 in reserves ready to go to replace that. So it won't impact the taxes for the future year like most borrowing does. So this is one way around it to be creative and still do internal borrowing and not impact in the 2025. As for the splash pad and Center of Excellence, we were asked to consider internal borrowing for this. So we looked at the use of internal borrowing of $450,000 over 8 years, and $340,000, that would be the full 100% that the town would have to use on top of the $300,000 that was donations for the splash pad, and then $110,000 of that for the Center of Excellence. We didn't want to use the full amount because technically the Center of Excellence is still a town park where we actually we should be replacing assets for it, but this portion of the Center of Excellence is more to do with the splash pad portion required. So that would reduce the 2025 tax impact for these two projects from $509,800 down to $59,800. Again, the reduction of $450,000 that we are anticipating to internally borrow. The downside would be that you are now putting on the 2026 levy an additional $74,250 to start repaying that 8-year loan. And that would be a 0.81% levy based on our 2024 levy of $9,102,400. So to discuss it, all the capital project descriptions were attached to this information. The description sheets have been provided at prior meetings, but we thought it would be easier to have everything all in one location. That's why you received them all again. There was an additional 2020 project added, and that was for the recreation for the snow pit coil replacement. In the 2025 budget, the assumption for OLG is going to be $1.313 million, so $1,313,000, a 1% increase over our 1.3 million budget. Of this amount, we put $128,200 towards the TCA reserve fund, which is all our tangible capital assets that we have that need to be replaced on a yearly basis. That's that one where we say we put monies aside so that the next year you can use 60% of it and continue moving on, but you want to put monies aside, always putting monies aside. This minute you stop putting monies aside, then that becomes empty and you'll never get back to putting any money into it. That leaves us a balance of $1,184,800 of the OLG money that we are budgeting for to be used for capital in 2025. So we're looking for the Finance Committee to provide direction for any additional changes, deferrals, or any advancement of other projects, because we also attached a 5-year capital projects that you may wish to have included for the upcoming budget on November 25th. The tax implications is the total tax monies required for these 2025 capital are $1,339,300, of which is for the the new police station, and we said we wanted to impact that over 3 years. So we need to have 125,600 new tax dollars towards the capital itself. This leaves us with $1,213,700 required from OLG monies, of which we only have that 1.1848. So that leaves us with an additional amount of $28,900 required of additional tax dollars over and above that we had available for OLG. So that would be the council's decision on if there's any projects you wish to defer, add more, you wanted to do other areas with that money. The link to the strategic plan is safe and reliable infrastructure, healthy and welcoming communities, balanced growth, as well as open and responsible government. Now, I would assume that you probably want to go through the capital projects, your worship, if you want to address that, and then we can discuss each of them. All
Right.
those that have capital projects are here from the departments to address your needs.
I just want to ask, does anyone have questions so far with the report? All right, so if you turn to your capital budget forecast summary, Councillor Hawking, go ahead.
Sorry, Your Worship. Could you go to the last page? What, the last page of our package? When it talks 2025 budget assumptions to date, it starts with 2024 tax levy of 9,102. Yeah, I'd just like to get it sorted in my head as we go through. So correct me if I'm wrong. What I see here is a summary of the previous pages, which indicates the way it stands right now is a 13.58% increase on the tax levy.
These are assumptions based on what 2024 tax levy was. The highlighted one in dark green is the amount of the additional amount required
Right.
for capital.
Right.
The other amounts are the fire hall borrowing that council has already approved, policing costs, which you would have to either send back to the board for reevaluation, and the police station that council has already agreed to adding those to the tax levy. And then we know about wages, utilities, insurance. These are ones we're assuming the percentage increases.
Yep.
And then if the splash pad is a go ahead, as part of the Parks and Recreation Report 12-23, the annual operations would be about 42.2. So that's all that includes right now. Once we get to this point, I'll tell you right now, we're looking at the 2025 budget and it's already at 19%.
Yes,
Because this doesn't include anything other than just these assumptions.
right,
It does
right.
not include anything else.
That's my point.
Okay.
So I didn't want to think that this was the bottom line. It's no. And and at the very bottom, I asked this question before. It says 141.91 per year, every 100,000. Is that last year?
No, this is based on that 13.58%. So if your levy goes from 9,102,400 up to the 10,338,540, which is that 13.58 assumptions.
Right,
You would be looking at $141.91 for every 100,000 assessment, or 39 cents a day. And just so you know, the average is 220, and there's a lot that are around the 300 cents. So you're talking 3 times that
right. Okay,
with that 13.58.
right.
That does not just tell you that for the 100,000 levy that we were talking about previously.
Okay, thank you.
So Chris, if we're rounding figures, you're saying 1% is 91,000. If we say 100,000, every time we reduce by something on the capital list by 100,000, we're reducing by 1%.
Correct, but keep in mind that council has always wanted the OLG money to cover capital. When you don't cover the full amount from OLG, that extra OLG money then goes into operations. Now, you're going to have a certain amount of that OLG money towards operations, like you did in 2024 of $161,300, which I told council back in September or August, I should say, and you didn't want me to bring that up, that was an amount that we had to cover in the 2025 budget. You remember that discussion that we had?
Yes. Okay, so anything else? Okay, so we're on the capital budget forecast summary where everything is grouped.
Page 43.
Okay. I have page 37. That's why I'm not giving you page numbers today. 'Cause- All right, so the first one, protection services. Are there any questions or comments with that grouping? Yes.
Sorry, just to add again, this evening we are looking for direction on things that you may feel could be deferred. Remain, if it remains, it brings forward for our next budget meeting. And then when we get to the 5-year capital, if there's anything that needs to be brought forward, but that's what we're looking for this evening.
Okay, and go ahead, Chris.
Just so you know, these are not etched in stone. All your capital will be brought forward at November 25th, because in the meantime, there may be other stuff that comes forward as we're going through the operations. Somebody may have put something in operations that technically is capital that needs to be moved to capital and out of operations. So those could be brought forward on, but you'll see that on November 25th. This is just the information that we are aware of at this point in time.
Right, Councillor Hawking.
Yeah, so on page 44, recreation and culture, we've got total expenditure there, $640,000. But that's not the impact on the levy, because our contribution of 300,000, is that reflected anywhere?
Yes, it is.
Isn't this?
But I think the mayor wanted you to go through each function first before you jump to each function.
Well, isn't it misleading though? It
No,
really isn't.
it's not misleading.
Oh,
If you look, the total expenditures at the bottom of that page is 16,344,800.
yes.
That's how much it's costing you for all of these capital projects, of which you need new tax dollars or OLG money to cover 1.3 million of that.
right.
The rest is coming from water fees, because you're looking at things underground that are water, same with sewer. Then you're also looking at reserve funds that are being used. A lot of those were for the water tower. And then the grants that are coming in, which would be for these, again, the water tower, we're getting monies in for this.
Yeah.
And then the other would be trade-ins, donations, internal borrowing, those kind of things. So on that 640,000 outdoor splash pad, that's the one we had talked about recently. Under other, it'll be internal borrowing of 340,000, and then there will be the 300,000 in donations. So there is no tax dollar impact in 2025 for capital. But I did warn you that it's coming up in 2026, that it will hit your operations for $74,000. And the same for the Center of Excellence. This year, you're going to take 110,000 and you're going to internally borrow it with 340. So you get that 450,000 internal borrowing over 8 years, of which will impact your 2026 and 8 years forward on that. But in 2025, 59,800 of that is coming from taxes. That's how that reads. That's why you have different columns, so that you have an identity of what is actually coming from tax dollars. So when the mayor had asked for the protection service in the new police services building, that $125,600 is new taxes that's required, because council requested that there be a 3-year tax phase in. Because if you don't do that in 2024, then you're impacting the amount that you're using from the OLG money, and it's not really adding a 3-year phase in for this police building. Does that make sense?
Okay, Chris, so since you're on that next one, replacement of the rescue pumper, that 198,000 under other.
Yes, that's in internal borrowing. You'll probably see that when we look at all the internal and external borrowing, that we have that report coming up. That 198,000 will be added. You will remember when you agreed to this fire rescue pumper, it was a 3-year term where we had to pay 225,000 or 250,000, I think it was, for the chassis, another 198 to get the thing ordered and actually built, and then a 20,000 for the decals and everything else that needs to be in the 3rd year. And then early 2027, there's the balance of about 440,000. And at that point, you're going to be around the $932,000 to $52,000 that we will be borrowing either externally or internally for that.
Okay, so Councillor Hawking.
I'm going to throw this out and it probably is a silly suggestion, but I'm going to throw it anyways. In my former life, I used to get told by someone way up and said, okay, here's your budget, but cut it 5%. You find the savings because we're gonna cut you 5%. I don't care how you find it. You're getting paid to do that, do it. So if we went to $16,344,800 and we said to you folks, find 5% out of the capital, that's $817,000. That's 9% on the levy. Is that a possibility, or am I just talking of old style?
I think you're talking old style because you're
Okay.
basing it on the total expenditures, not the actual tax dollars that are required. You got to remember, we're applying for grants. So when you get grants, you cover most of that $16 million. Like I said, of that $16 million expenditures, you're only asking for 1.3 of that. The rest is covered because you've been putting monies aside. Like in a savings account, you've been getting grants to do this. You're getting trade-ins, you're getting donations, those kind of things. So you can't use the full 16,000. I mean, it's great. It's great to say make cuts 5%, but when I'm showing you the assumptions, you're already at 13% and we haven't done anything. If you can cut electricity and gas and water and sewer, you go right ahead, but you're turning off taps, you're turning things off earlier than it's your service levels then would have to be down to get all that.
All right, Counselor Cable.
Thank you, Your Worship. So Chris, if I'm reading the report correct, essentially right now we're 28,900 over budget for capital. And so if we don't want any tax impact for capital, we need to cut 28,900.
Correct. That's if you want the full amount of OLG to be just all capital. Whereas in the past, you had 182,000 of OLG money in 2022, 161,300 in 2023. So are you putting, or sorry, it was 23, 24. And are you wanting actual OLG money for operations again? If that's the case, then you would have to take that amount that you want for operations as well. But if you're truly looking at OLG money for this, you're about 28,900 over.
Okay, so let's keep going. So under health services, we have the rooftop mechanical updates. So we've got 150,000 coming from taxes and 630,000 from reserves.
Yes, you will remember that we've been putting monies aside each year into the medical clinic, and we have about 580,000, and we're putting 50,000 in 2025. That will cover the 630, and then each year thereafter we continue with the 50,000, and now we build it up again. So when we have these big areas, this is what it takes. But this was a reduction of about 32,000 from the original 182, and that was doing the 3-year phase, and this is all in 1 year.
Keep that in mind. Transportation services. So we've got, are there any questions with that? We've got 2 roads. We got a loader replacement, 3 roads, I should say. Deputy Mayor Dickert.
Thank you, Your Worship. I guess the one I still question is 18th Ave. Like, is there any activity going to happen there that we need to do that this coming year? I haven't heard or seen any activity. I just wondering, is that one that can be deferred?
Who wants to speak to that? Andrew? Ron? Okay.
Well, I guess it's based upon the development of it, our agreement of. There was a sale of property when they develop, when they proceed, we were responsible for 50% of the road plus the water and sewer servicing. What's coming out of the tax levy is 50% of the road. Of that 93,500, and they're contributing the other 50%. Timing, I'll maybe shoot at one back behind me.
Andrew?
Thank you, Your Worship. Further to Ron, yeah, the agreement we have on the sale of the land, the 10 acres, ready-made site, is that construction would start there by November of 2025. that agreement is out there. So if those dates are met as per that agreement with that landowner, there should probably be some costs carried potentially to do some of that expansion. That 18th Ave extension is required to gain access to that site properly if it were to occur. We're really, as Ron indicated, we're really at the mercy of that developer doing that project. It can be argued perhaps that work wouldn't need to be done until 2026, when that property would potentially look to be occupied, not just start construction. I guess it's a bit of a timing thing that isn't 100% our control.
So I'm just looking at the project that that owner owns on the other side of the road. You know, it's not moving really quickly, and it would appear that everything may lag a bit, is what I, from my own observation. So I'm just questioning whether that is one project we could defer. You said November of 25 was in the agreement?
Through your worship, yeah, they need to make some significant progress by November of 2025 as part of the sale of that property. But I do echo what you're saying about an adjacent property that's lagged.
And if they don't have any activity there by November of 2025, what happens? We bring that property back into our inventory, or what happens?
Through your worship, quite frankly, we could, as part of the agreement states, there's a certain rights of refusal and requirements as per the sale of that property. I would say that's a further discussion that we would have to have with council at that time if and when, or if nothing were to happen on that property.
I guess I stand behind my thoughts that is one we could defer, because based on what we're seeing happening, I don't think we're going to see any activity there.
Through your worship, yeah, I have to, go back to Ron, and yeah, the timing's everything, and quite frankly, I could easily stand here in 2026 and say nothing has happened. So I do echo what you're saying. Maybe if some of the work had to happen, maybe there's a component there that a certain amount could be done. I'm not sure.
Go ahead, Ron.
It's kind of really these numbers here where to just put water sewer servicing in and put the road to a gravel base. So it's not exactly if it was a complete project. We know it's going to come sometime. It was on the list last year. It got pulled back to this year to put it on for a 2025, and we're talking about it again. So.
Okay, it's just something to keep in mind when we get down to the final strokes. Chris?
If it's council's decision to defer that, we could defer it. However, if it needs to be brought forward at that time, a report could come to council and say how we would finance it for that time being. If that's something that you want to look at, that's a savings of 93,500 in 2025, knowing that this project still has to come forward.
Councillor Cable.
Thank you, Worship. So just looking at the total cost of that project is 468,000, and we're saying that the developer is paying for half of just the road. Is there anyone else that would be using the servicing on this property besides this property owner, or we're running a $500,000 item just to service this one piece?
We're extending it so that services the property that would get developed on the east side of 18th Avenue. One property owner only.
Okay, and they're only paying just half of the road. They're not paying for half of the servicing to this site.
Yeah, the agreement on the purchase of sale was 50% of the cost of the road to get it to a gravel base.
Okay. Councillor Fleet?
Your worship, Ron, I'm just wondering, does the fish hatchery use that same road?
Yeah, I believe they've had access back there from before we actually started in the industrial park. So I do believe they do go back there, but we're not providing any other services to them back to the hatchery.
Thank you.
All right, keep that one in mind, Chris. Or anything else in the transportation services? All right, environment. Any questions, comments? We've got the water tower, 24th Avenue. Curb and gutter sidewalks, I believe. The SCADA system, the wastewater plant upgrade. Interim plant upgrades. And the former JDSS sewer rehabilitation. Counselor Hudson.
Thank you, Your Worship. The former GDSS sewer rehabilitation was one that kind of cropped up for me. Is anything happening there? I understand, though, that there are all sorts of other properties close by that would happen, that would impact on that as well. But are they moving forward that they would need that anytime soon? Or is that still? Sorry, Andrew.
Chris, can I just, if I'm reading this correctly, it's not tax dollars, right?
Correct. Anything you see for water and wastewater, there will be no monies coming from taxes unless it's a road related
Right.
project. All the rest will come from water fees, sewer fees, or their respective reserve funds and or grants. The biggest one there is the 24th Avenue, that $1.3 million under other. That's because of the county. The county portion would be theirs. Mostly the road.
Andrew, did you want to comment? Maybe you should just sit.
I don't want to set a precedent. I would say it can only say so much on the property. Unfortunately, we all know the property. The owner does have a professional planning firm out of the city working on his application. We have been talking to them. We're hoping to see something formal in the next few months that will come to the public. With that said, the work, dedicated to that would be work that would happen quite quickly after potential consents and severances and transfers were to occur. So it wouldn't take very long after we saw a formal application to be potentially granted or approved that work could happen. That would be one of the first phases, kind of as part of that redevelopment. Again, like 18th Ave, unfortunately, it's kind of tied to a private developer that I don't like speaking for.
Your worship, just so you know, if that project does not occur, then that 140,000 that was to come from sewer fees in 2025 will just get transferred to reserves for future use.
Counselor Hawking.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is just a consideration. When the water tower gets moved to the new proposed site, that property becomes far more saleable than it is right now. Because it'll have that building on it, it'll have that parking lot, no water tower. Has there been any consideration on putting that up for sale? And cutting down the costs, the sale of that property to offset the costs of the water tower.
Through you, your worship, we have talked about that in the past, but because the water tower is there, we still need access to it. I know there's some interest in it from the tenants that are actually there. But to move from there, we would have to move all the parks and recreation outside equipment. And the thought was to move it over to the public works area and build a new area for them as well to put all their equipment in. So it would be a combination. You want to sell it, but you need some of those funds to build that sheds or whatever it is required, if that's the direction that council wants to do. Because you are correct, once the water tower is gone, there is no need for the town to be a landlord. And the new owner of that, which could be one of the tenants in there, would, because I know the emergency paramedics still want to be there, so they would be happy to be able to still work with the people that are currently there. And I'm sure that they should get first right of refusal, those that are in the building, but we would get an appraisal done at that time. But that's still about two years
Yeah,
away.
yeah, that's right, but.
But yeah, it's been on the radar, so we're already,
Okay,
you know,
so as long as you're aware of it, because
yes, we are aware.
I just know from my radar, it would increase in value overnight once that tower goes. Anyway.
Councillor Fleet.
Thank you, Worship. Chris, how long do the Grey County have that property leased for the paramedics? How much longer?
They just signed a 5-year lease in 2024. So 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, end of December 31st, 2028.
You know, that's a possibility if they had interest in that property for a permanent spot for paramedics, but just thank you.
I always look 20 years out. And I think someday, and this is only my vision, that medical clinic may need to be expanded, whether it's parking or for offices, doctors, whatever's going on. I hate giving up town-owned land. It's hard to come by. So I always think 20 years ahead. So, because once we sell it, it's gone. Good. Okay, anything else with environment services? All right. Let's move on. Parks, Recreation and Culture. Any questions, comments, anything we can take out of there? Councillor Hudson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Consideration for the Kinsman Ballpark Pavilion. I know you've provided all sorts of pictures of things, and you did speak on a funding opportunity coming up for that as well. What exactly is the 80,000 for this on this expenditure? What is that for? That's different than what you spoke about at the last meeting.
Through your worship, that's more professional fees. Like we'll need an architect in order to do the design of the building. We'll probably need a civil engineer, so more professional fees before the project actually to make it shovel ready.
And so since that's not really on our radar right now, is that something that we can defer? Consultation fees?
If you notice, the 80,000 is not coming from taxes. This is coming from our TCA reserve fund. So you want to be shovel ready should the grants come into effect, because they always like to give it to shovel ready projects that are ready to go within that year. So if we do be proactive and use our TCA reserve fund, again, the monies that we put aside each year, and then we use next year up to 60% of that money towards these existing TCAs. That's what this is acknowledging in this budget. But you can defer it if you wish to. That's council's prerogative.
Go ahead.
Just want to ask Laura, the grant though, if approved, needs to be completed by 2026, was it, if I recall, or from your report, or do you remember? That was just. at the last
Was the
meeting.
question when the money has to be spent? It's a 3-year program.
Right. What I was getting at is the 80,000 for this year is related to design and engineering. So getting the design ready and shovel ready, that then you would build in 2026. My question was around the grant. Do we have until 2027 or 2026? Because that would impact things, right? Like if you got the grant and you had to be done by 2026, then we wouldn't be shovel ready if we didn't do this engineering, was more my clarification.
Correct. So it could be in 2027, that the project itself could be conducted in 2027, but that shovel readiness is still a priority.
So if you look under the taxes column, nobody's mentioned the free barrier-free bottle filling stations. Councillor Cable, sorry. I just had to put that out there. Any comments from anyone?
Well, thank you, Your Worship. Certainly, this was an item that was brought forward last budget cycle and had to be deferred, which is fine. I do think that at some point it would make sense for for the filling stations to be put into our facilities, not only the P&H Center, but also the Civic Center. And I hope that one will also be added at the new splash pad, hopefully on the washroom building that is being reconstructed. I do have a question. Like it does say in the report that the $20,000 is for 3 of the filling stations. I don't know if it's bulk pricing that we are going for 3, but personally, I think even if we had 1 in the lobby, that would be a great start, and people could fill up their bottles before they head off to the pool deck or onto the rink.
Thank you. Chris, you were looking for 28,000, was it? We'd have
28,900. But if you're deferring 18th Ave, that's 93,500. There, so you're in the good. So some of the OLJ money now would be going towards operations, or you're bringing forward another capital item.
And I see the hydraulic trailer is still, it's 29,000. It's still in there, and that's still important to Parks and Rec. Laura?
Yeah, your worship, this trailer itself, so it's 2012. What's happening is the hydraulic lifts, it's failing. So, it's an operational challenge. Let's just picture a situation where we have it full with a load. And, let's say we're going to the dump and at this point, we would normally dump it. At that point, when that fails, it's been repaired multiple times. Staff are literally would be hand spading, that material out of the back. I'm just painting a scenario in this case, but that's what we're facing, for operational challenges with that one.
Safety.
Okay, so Councillor Hudson, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. So the refrigeration plant equipment, the 40,000, is that for the brine pump 1, the first phase of that whole replacement? Is that the cost for just that one?
Yes, there's a second one, that would be brought forward, based on the condition assessment that was provided by our ice plant, company. It looks like it is proposed for next year. Same price, 40, assuming there's no difference in replacement costs.
Go
So
to
that,
page 83, and that'll give you the details of the whole project.
so that priority rating has moved up considerably from a C then?
Yes, Laura hasn't gone through and reevaluated the priorities, if that's what you're talking about at this time. They will be updated for the November meeting.
Okay, Councillor Sacco?
Thank you, Your Worship. So I thought Councillor Cable was going to ask for 1 bottle filling station for this year. And I was going to propose that we do 1 in 2026 and 1 in 2027, unless, of course, that would be more expensive, Chris.
That whole economy of scale is what would be impacting here. I would also even challenge, I think it was brought forward with Councillor Cable saying it'd be the one in the lobby. The challenge with the lobby is anyone who's on the ice, who has skates, you wouldn't be able to come out to that one. So the third one is proposed down that players corridor where we have the flooring that allows participants with skates on. So certainly there could be competing interests on which one would be what location would have the most priority. There'd also be an argument up to our walking track and exercise area is very well used. And, certainly that would be another priority as well. So it's getting a price of an individual one versus the 3. I'd have to have some time to prepare that.
Sounds like all or none. Because really, how do you choose?
Each area is important to people, different people.
like you're gonna be bringing in contractors, right? Electrical potentially, plumbing obviously. So again, you're bringing them back 3 times. So I agree with Laura's economy of scale piece.
Councillor Fleet's gonna say the Huff and Puffers want it for sure.
They drink other stuff. At home. The trail system East Loop development, 24th Avenue, how close are we to
I'm not gonna put a date on that, unfortunately, tonight, Counselor Fleet, but you know, the project is moving forward slowly. We are relying on outside consultants in order to bring this at this stage, we're relying on outside consultants to continue to push this forward.
something you would want to leave in at this point and not take out?
Yeah, I think, yes, I would like to leave that in based on the work that's been put into it.
And that's in the reserve fund. Go ahead, Sherry.
I was just going to say this specifically is for resurfacing of 24th Ave to where you would get off for oh my goodness, Saugeen Cedar East. So the update is related to the East Trail Loop that we have on the planned for this year, but this specific east section is related to 24th Ave resurfacing to that Saugeen Cedars East section.
All right, so we've only found one thing, and that was the 18th Avenue extension. I'm okay with that as long as if things turn around with the interest rates being lowered and construction costs hopefully being lowered, and somebody wants it to be investment ready. And we can have a report come back and Chris will give us options on where that money will come from. Right, Chris?
So you want the 93.5 deferred? Is what you're asking me? That project 18th? I could defer to 2026 and bring forward again at that point. But if something were to happen in 2025 and they had to make that agreement that Andrew had spoken about for November, Ron and Andrew will come with a report and say that this needs to be done this year and here's how we're going to pay for it.
And that would work, Ron?
Yeah, we can make that work because they haven't committed an exact time frame, so there's some room on that one, I feel.
Okay. I think we're all in agreement with that, Chris. And we're sticking with the water, the filling stations for now, right? I keep thinking there's hoses on sale at this time of year, but I can see why it's important. All right, so I guess we need a motion on that, right, Vicky?
So we just needed direction. What you wanted to defer and stuff like that.
Provide direction for
Yeah.
staff.
So that 28.9, and if you give that 93.5, that means 64,600 will be going into your operations. So it'll cover some of the one-time operations that are coming up.
Okay. So all in favor? That is carried. Very good. Next is report FIN 0624 DCS. This is the internal and external borrowing. And it's from Chris, our Director of Corporate Services and Treasurer. I need a mover and seconder to put this on the floor. Deputy Mayor Dickert and Councillor Fleet. Oh. Sorry, I don't need a mover and seconder. It's for information. All right, Chris, go ahead.
Okay, as mentioned, this has just been provided for information purposes. There were 2 attachments to it. The first one is to show you what in 2024 we are paying towards internal and external borrowing, about $427,000. There are 5 existing internal borrowing loans, 3 temporary internal borrowing loans, and 1 external borrowing loan, which is the P&H Center. At the end of 2024, one of the internal loans for the fire aerial truck will be finalized and has been removed from the 2025. In 2025, the internal borrowing for the area truck has been removed and a new internal borrowing for the trail system was added that council had requested. The temporary loans shown in 2024 for the fire hall and the trails were removed and now are on the long-term borrowing. So the trails is currently set up, as I mentioned, internally, and the fire hall will be an external loan through the Green Municipal Funding with the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, the FCM. And the payments for this trail project will start in September 2025. We had talked about taking the P&H Center loan, which is about $169,000 a year. And then when it's done in August, we'll start the new one so that 169 continues. And so it's no new taxes that are required in the year that you're borrowing for the trails. And we actually have a savings of about $6,000 once we do that. So the P&H Center will end August 2025, and then the new loan for the trails internally will start, and it'll be about $50,000 for that year. So that's where we're about 163 versus 169. So good savings there. And the upside is if it's internal loan, we actually get the interest back to ourselves from that department to cover all other areas for the municipality. So the annual payments for internal external loans effective 2025 will be increasing to $761,000, which is an increase of about $33,900. And as we know, most of that is due to the new fire hall that's being added on there. The council was very proactive, and we made sure that we were financing that over 2 years. So we had an increase last year in the levy, and this year's levy is only going to be about 2.52%, and that's at $229,000. So the link to the strategic plan is goal 1, safe and reliable infrastructure, balanced growth, and open and responsible government. Again, this was just for information. So if you have any questions on page 93 or 95, which I've given you the internal external borrowing summaries. So the internal borrowing in 2024 was for the fire truck aerial, landfill expansion, the fire pumper truck, theater renovations, and the launch pad deficit. The temporary borrowing was for the trail bridges. That new fire rescue pumper that we talked about was a 3-year term that we were going to do internally, and the fire hall temporary borrowing. The external was the P&H Center. When you go to page 95, you'll see what is on the horizon for 2025 and has been included in the 2025 budget. Hope I tried to make it as straightforward for you so you didn't have to see tons of numbers, but it still made some sense.
Any comments, questions? Okay. The next is FIN 050. Please go ahead.
So what did the P&H Center ultimately cost us? Chris?
The town itself?
Yeah.
Under $3 million.
Okay, thank you.
It was a one-third funding, federal, provincial, and the others, but we borrowed about $3 million. It was about 4.8, I think we ended up putting in for everything. With the fundraising, we received about 1.8 million.
That was good.
That's not bad, 15 years to pay off a building.
All right, now we're on to the quarterly financial statement for July to September of this year, again from Chris, our Director of Corporate Services and Treasurer, and this one's for information.
This is for information. This is for the July to September information. We usually provide you with the balance sheet, show you where we're at the end of September. And we've also attached the accounts payable listings for July to September. The current operations balance shown on that statement of operations at the end of September 30th showed us about a $1.2 million surplus. Keep in mind that of this surplus, 1.1 of that is actually water, wastewater. So those are user fees, so that drops it down. So basically we only have 125,700. Keep in mind as well that all the taxes have been billed but not collected. So on the balance sheet, there's a receivable, but in the statement of operations, it's like you actually have the revenue. So that's why it overinflates it, looks like that. And the second installment for the taxes for the county and the school boards is about 1.3 million of that. So doesn't look like we have lots of money in there right now, but again, the last quarter is when we start getting the financing, the grants, all the other information starts coming in. And then we provided you a Town of Hanover taxes receivable graph. It actually looks pretty good. People have actually prepaid for their taxes that are due at the end of November. So that looks like we're in the good right now because people are prepaying ahead of time. And we have a lot that are on the pre-authorized payment on a monthly basis. So we're getting monthly payments. So the projection is that we are currently on target with the budget, as most of the capital is within the budget. We brought all the reports to council saying that we're going to finance it from if we needed extra money. Again, that hasn't been done yet to date, so that will get done as well. We also recently received at the beginning of October our July to September OLG allotment of about 357,000. So totally we're at 1,018,000 for the year, and we budgeted 1.3. It is anticipated that we will be within that limit because we need about 281,600, and our average for the past 3 years has been around the $300,000 mark. So we should be good there. All our capital is budgeted to date. We had 15 million in capital, 15.9, I should say, of which 7.1 million is for the fire hall. And we have incurred about 9 million to date. And the fire department actually shows more expenses than revenues. So as part of that surplus that we're showing there as well of the 125, that's with 3,300,000 still not paid for finance. So we have higher expenses. So we're doing pretty good on that as well. As previously noted at the September 23rd finance meeting, the West Ontario promissory note was received in full. And a portion of those revenues, there was 380,000 that were sitting in a reserve, non-earmarked for anything in particular, like not even for general reserves or anything. It was just there. That money was now transferred to the TCA reserve fund so it could be used for our future TCAs, which means we were able to use 60% of that for our TCAs in the capital in 2025 budget. So the link to the strategic plan is goal 1, safe and reliable infrastructure and open and responsible government. So if anyone has any questions on any of the attachments, please let me know.
Thanks, Chris. Any questions on percentages and what's been spent and brought in? No? Okay. Next is report FIN 0724 DCS. The subject is the 2024 investments. Again, it's from Chris.
Again, a lot of these reports I used to send to council, but now because we have a finance committee, I get to send them to you and get you to see them. So this is a report just for information. And as part of our investment policy, I need to let you know what we have invested in the register and annually prepare a report to you as well. So the following summary is, we have the West Ontario shares. They're put in at $2.7 million because that was the value of the shares at the time. So unless they get them totally looked at and reevaluated for market value, that's the only way these rates or amounts would go up. We are anticipating to get $60,400. We haven't yet. We normally get it by June. So I know Sherry is checking into it why we haven't received that money at this time. The next 3 items are one, investments in our equity fund. And we had 300,000 invested in the cemetery care and maintenance trust fund. Care and maintenance, basically all you can use is interest on this money. You can't do anything else with the money. So only if there's interest. So any year that we do repairs to the graves or any other thing else, as well as the second one, which is cemetery stone care. Again, you can only use the interest on this. You cannot touch that money. We've been lucky. We've been investing the money for a while, and the value is more than doubled on most of these. And the other one, and the one investment equity that we put in 1 million years ago, is now worth about $2.4 million. Again, we put in the million, we continue to get dividends reinvested, and otherwise this is what it would be worth as of September 30th. And then the last one we have is that we actually have a separate bank account with Meridian Credit Union for consolidated reserve funds. Now, the difference between reserves and reserve funds: reserves is our checking account where we pay all our bills, money's just sitting there. Reserve funds, investments, we put them away, we put them aside. This is what all these investments are. Last year, we had 3 separate GICs. All those GICs have now been put into this bank account because we had the fire hall, we had the trails. We needed a lot of money available in case something came up. And our bank account was paying higher interest rate than some of the GICs that they were offering. So that's why it's still sitting in that account. Again, the linked strategic plan is safe and reliable infrastructure, open and responsible government. I provided you a statement of account for all those one investments so that you had a general idea when we invested, when any money was taken out, all the interest that we received on a yearly basis. So that you have a general idea how this money is being invested and what we can use on it. And that's it.
Very good. Counselor Cable.
Thank you, Worship. Not directly about the finances, Chris, but just wondering, we have the account for cemetery stone care, that trust fund. How's that that fund used? Just wondering about like what is the upkeep that we typically do in the cemetery? I know that Ron's not here, but certainly when we were up there for a tour on the weekend, we noticed that there was one stone in particular that is kind of leaning against another one at this point has come off the base. So just wondering how we determine how those funds will be used.
Every year in his cemetery budget, he'll have an area where he fixes all these stones. So every time you put a stone in the cemetery, you have to pay $50 to $100 for the stone care. And then the person who owns the cemetery has to put that money aside, invest it, and only be able to use the interest to actually do the work on it. So all the interest that we get from these, we could use if we didn't want to use tax dollars, those kind of things. But we cannot touch the principal. We can only touch the interest on that. So you'll notice that one year we pulled out some money to do some repairs at the cemetery.
The staff basically do an assessment and they look at which stones need to be repaired and then they go ahead and do them.
That is my understanding. Ron usually goes through and he'll say each year we need to do so many stones, and it'll be up to the cemetery caretaker to say, okay, I've got $10,000 or $15,000. It costs X number of dollars per stone to fix it, depending on the size of it. And they get done and they have to get replaced. Some may need foundations. Some may just need their stone fixed. But that's what that stone care is for. Keep in mind, the old ones never had monies put in there. Anybody new going in there is basically paying for all this information to get done.
And just to clarify, so the $50 or $100, that's in our rates and fees, but is that set by council, or that comes from a provincial body?
It comes from the provincial fund and it's all based on the size of the monument. The monument size depicts how much you're actually going to pay into the fund.
And you're not permitted to use that money for roads in the cemetery.
Correct. You can't use any of that money. That is strictly for stone care. And then the other one was for care and maintenance, which is for the actual cemetery land itself, not the roads, just the land.
Interesting. So, right. Okay, we'll move on to the last one, the budget assumptions to date. Chris.
Yes, I think we discussed this earlier in the meeting regarding this. This is just the assumptions that we had that we know of, with no changes to any departments bringing in what their one-time items are, any new stuff that had to be added for maintenance and those kind of areas. I am looking at the 25 right now, and we're around 18.7% or 19%. And most of it is that stuff that you're seeing there, but then there's the other 6% for the other one-time maintenance. And I think there's some major, 50,000 for one type of item, and it's all a maintenance item that doesn't come up every year. And then there's actuarial reports that have to be done every 3 years. All these things that come up on a 3-year or 5-year basis are starting to come up to the front. And these are not noted in this assumption.
You're not ending on a good note there, Chris. Councillor Cable.
Thank you, Worship. When this committee meets again, just wondering if we could get a report or an outline of all of the new staff positions that have been added into the budget. Also, just wanting to clarify that positions that were added last year as a one-time expense have not been included in the budget for next year.
The next time we meet will actually be our budget meeting on November 25th, and it would be up to each department head when they give their report. They will be telling you at that point all their staff that they have and all the new stuff as well. But you would want an overall summary if we could possibly do one, is what you're asking for, correct?
That would be great. Thank you.
Because this will be well before, all the stuff will be put together before the org review comes back to council regarding this.
All right, other comments, questions? That's the last item on the agenda, except for adjournment at 5:49. Moved by Counselor Sackle, seconded by Counselor Hawking. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you.